June 6, 1944. Omaha Beach, 7:42 a.m. Lieutenant James McCarty is pinned behind a tank obstacle, shrapnel tearing through his left calf, unable to move. 14 men from his unit are already dead. The German MG-42 nest has them locked down, every burst cutting through smoke and bodies like a saw. Then he sees movement, 20 yards away, emerging through the cordite haze. A German soldier, rifle raised, clear shot. McCarty recognizes the face instantly. 3 months earlier, December 1943, Tunisia. He'd slapped this man in front of 40 soldiers. Franz Huber, the German private who refused orders, who demanded his stolen cigarette case back. McCarty had kept it. Now, Huber's finger rests on the trigger. 3 seconds pass. Combat doesn't allow 3 seconds. Then Huber lowers his rifle, shouts, "Sanitäter," and throws a smoke grenade. A silver cigarette case tumbles from his pocket. McCarty survives. Huber vanishes. What made an enemy soldier save the man who shamed him? By December 1943, in a dusty POW holding area outside Tunis, Lieutenant James McCarty had earned a reputation. Strict, respected, by the book. He didn't socialize with enlisted men. He didn't bend rules. When he found a silver cigarette case lying in the sand near the German prisoner section, he pocketed it without a second thought. Standard wartime souvenir. The engraving inside was German. Für Franz, dein Bruder lebt durch dich. But McCarty couldn't read it. Just decorative script to him. Franz Huber had been captured 2 weeks earlier. 22 years old, spoke broken English, kept to himself. When he saw McCarty pick up the case, something shifted in his expression. 2 hours later, during the work detail, Huber refused to move. "That case?" he said quietly. "It belongs to me." The guards looked at McCarty. 40 soldiers watched. Insubordination from a POW couldn't stand, not in front of the men. McCarty walked over slowly. "You don't make demands here," he said, and slapped Huber across the face. Hard enough to echo. Hard enough to remember. The case stayed in McCarty's pocket. What McCarty didn't know, the inscription translated to, "For Franz, your brother lives through you." Huber's brother Hans had died at Stalingrad in January 1943, saving Franz's life by pushing him into cover seconds before a mortar round hit. The cigarette case was Hans's dying gift, the last physical piece of the person who'd kept Franz alive. Huber didn't rage. He didn't fight. He memorized McCarty's face with absolute precision. The shape of his jaw, the way he held his shoulders, the rhythm of his walk. Then he returned to the work detail without another word. In the North African sun, the silver case caught the light as McCarty walked away. Huber watched until the officer disappeared into the command tent. Dignity is invisible until someone takes it from you in public. 6 months later, that stolen dignity would become the only currency that mattered. Between January and May 1944, 2 high men prepared for the same battle from opposite sides of the ocean. McCarty trained with the 2nd Battalion, 116th Infantry Regiment at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Drills, beach assault simulations, letters home to his wife Margaret in Boston. The invasion was coming. Everyone knew it. The only questions were when and where. Franz Huber, meanwhile, was transferred from North Africa to German defensive positions along the Normandy coast. After weeks in Allied custody, he'd been part of a prisoner exchange. Wounded or low-priority POWs traded for intelligence purposes. The Wehrmacht needed every man they could get. By March 1944, Huber was assigned to an MG-42 machine gun nest overlooking what would become Omaha Beach. The historical record shows that 156,000 Allied troops prepared for D-Day across southern England. German forces expected an invasion, but couldn't pinpoint the location. Some intelligence pointed to Calais, some to Normandy. Hitler kept divisions scattered, hedging bets. By late May, Huber's unit was dug into concrete bunkers with overlapping fields of fire. They had weeks to prepare kill zones. McCarty packed his footlocker on May 30th. Gun oil, socks, letters, spare ammunition. At the bottom, under everything, the silver cigarette case. He'd almost forgotten about it. The engraving meant nothing to him. Just a piece of metal from a war that was grinding everyone down. Neither man knew they'd meet again. But war is a machine that grinds strangers into each other's fate. The smell of gun oil in North Carolina barracks. The sound of men singing old songs at night to calm their nerves. The feel of cold metal in a footlocker. The taste of fear hiding under routine. In 31 days, one of them would hold the other's life in his hands. June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. The Higgins boats cut through rough water toward Omaha Beach. McCarty's unit, 2nd Battalion, 116th Infantry, was part of the first wave. Men vomited from seasickness and fear. The Navy bombardment had been hammering German positions for hours. Shells screaming overhead. Everyone believed the beach defenses would be destroyed before they landed. They were wrong. The ramp dropped at 6:33 a.m. 9 men from McCarty's boat died in 15 seconds. Machine gun fire raking across the opening before they could react. The historical record shows that Omaha Beach suffered over 2,000 casualties in the first hours. The German defenses were largely intact. The naval bombardment had missed. McCarty made it off the boat, stumbling through chest-deep water, holding his rifle above his head. Bullets snapped past. Men fell around him, the water turning red. He reached a tank obstacle 50 yards up the beach and dove behind it. That's when the shrapnel hit. Hot metal tearing through his left calf, shredding muscle. He couldn't move forward, couldn't run, just trapped behind steel, while the MG-42 fire cut down everyone trying to advance. From Huber's position, 300 yards up the slope, the beach looked like a shooting gallery. His machine gun crew worked in rhythm. Gunner firing in short bursts, assistant feeding ammunition belts, Huber scanning for targets through the smoke. Standard German defensive doctrine. Wait for the boats to unload, then open fire when the soldiers were most exposed. Then McCarty's helmet flew off, blown away by a near-miss explosion. For just a moment, his face was completely visible through the smoke. Huber saw it clearly through the gun's sights, recognized him instantly. The American officer from Tunisia, the man who'd taken the cigarette case, the man who'd slapped him in front of 40 soldiers. The first minute of combat erases every plan you ever made. Somewhere in that chaos, a German gunner saw his face and remembered. At 7:40 a.m., McCarty was bleeding heavily behind the tank obstacle. His left leg wouldn't respond. Every time he tried to move, pain shot through his calf like electricity. The beach was a killing field. Bodies everywhere. Men screaming for medics. Explosions throwing sand and water into the air. Then he saw movement, 20 yards away, emerging from the smoke. A German soldier carrying a rifle. Not running, not shooting. Walking deliberately toward him. The soldier's face came into focus through the haze. Franz Huber. McCarty's mind processed it in fragments. Same face, same build. Impossible coincidence. The German private from Tunisia, now here on Omaha Beach, rifle raised and aimed directly at him. 3 seconds stretched into eternity. Huber had a clear shot. An officer, disabled, completely exposed. The kind of target that ends careers or saves lives depending on which side you're on. Historical accounts document that German and Allied soldiers occasionally showed mercy during combat, but rarely to officers who were considered strategic targets. Officers gave orders. Killing them disrupted command structure. Huber's internal calculation happened fast. Revenge versus conscience. The humiliation from December versus the memory of his brother's final words. Your brother lives through you. Hans had saved Franz at Stalingrad by showing mercy to a wounded Russian soldier who later helped Franz escape encirclement. The debt of mercy was a chain that extended beyond nations. Huber's hand moved away from the trigger. Slowly. McCarty watched, unable to process what he was seeing. Then Huber shouted, "Sanitäter!" German for medic, loud enough to confuse the soldiers nearby. Why would a German call for a medic for an American? Mercy isn't forgiveness. It's choosing not to become what hurt you. What Huber did next violated every instinct that keeps soldiers alive. Huber threw a smoke grenade toward McCarty's position. The canister arced through the air, trailing white phosphorus. As he threw it, something fell from his uniform pocket. The silver cigarette case, tumbling end over end, landing in the sand 10 feet from McCarty. The smoke billowed instantly, thick white clouds obscuring the German sightlines. McCarty couldn't see Huber anymore, but he heard 3 rifle shots fired deliberately over his head. Not at him, above him. A signal? A warning to other Germans that this sector was covered? Allied medics saw the smoke and took the opportunity. 2 men sprinted forward under the cover, grabbed McCarty by the arms, and dragged him back toward the waterline. His legs screamed in protest. Blood soaked through his uniform. Through breaks in the smoke, he caught one last glimpse of the dented cigarette case lying in bloody sand between them. The same case he'd taken in Tunisia, now returned by accident in the chaos of D-Day. Huber disappeared back into German positions before anyone could identify him. His machine gun crew never asked why he'd left his post. In the confusion of battle, 30 seconds of absence meant nothing. By the time the smoke cleared, McCarty was being evacuated down the beach. The historical record notes that individual acts of mercy occurred during D-Day, but were rarely documented. Soldiers on both sides later told stories of enemies who could have killed them, but didn't. Most never learned why. As McCarty was carried toward a medical boat, his mind kept replaying the 3 seconds. Huber's face, the recognition in his eyes, the choice not to fire, the smoke grenade that saved his life. The hardest debts are the ones you can never repay. By nightfall, McCarty knew 3 things. He was alive, his enemy saved him, and he had to find out why. June 7th, 1944. McCarty was evacuated to a field hospital behind the beachhead. Leg badly injured, shrapnel fragments still embedded deep in muscle. The doctor said he was lucky. The wound missed the major artery by millimeters. Another inch, and he would have bled out on the beach in minutes. He told no one about the German soldier who saved him. How could he? It would sound like cowardice or combat delusion. Officers didn't survive because enemy soldiers showed mercy. They survived through courage and tactical skill. That's what the reports would say. That's what the medal citations would read. 3 days later, on June 10th, during battlefield cleanup operations, McCarty convinced a medic to take him back to the tank obstacle where he'd been pinned. The cigarette case was still there, half buried in sand, dented from impact, blood-stained. But the engraving was still readable. He found a German-speaking soldier in a prisoner processing unit. What does this say? The translation hit him like a second wound. For Franz, your brother lives through you. McCarty realized what he'd taken in Tunisia wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a promise. A dying brother's final gift. The physical embodiment of someone's sacrifice. And he'd pocketed it like a tourist souvenir, then slapped the man who asked for it back. The case went into his new footlocker, but this time on top, where he'd see it every day. He began searching through German casualty lists, POW rosters, anything he could access through military intelligence channels. Franz Huber, 352nd Infantry Division, last known position, Omaha Beach. The verified records showed D-Day German casualties ranged between 4,000 and 9,000 miles, though documentation was incomplete. Many bodies were never identified. Many soldiers simply vanished in the chaos, killed, captured, or deserted in the confusion. The smell of antiseptic in the field hospital, the sound of wounded men crying out at night, the weight of the dented case in his pocket, heavier now than when he'd first stolen it. Some debts follow you home even when the war ends. Franz Huber's name appeared on no list. Not casualty, not prisoner, not deserter. The war ended in May 1945. McCarty returned to Boston with a Bronze Star, a limp, and an obsession he couldn't explain to anyone. His wife Margaret welcomed him home to their apartment in Dorchester. 3 rooms, window, overlooking the street, everything exactly as he'd left it. Except him. He wasn't the same. By 1946, the obsession had consumed his study. Wall maps marked with locations of POW camps, displaced person centers, Red Cross offices, rosters of German soldiers, immigration records, casualty reports. Margaret would find him there at 2 a.m, cigarette burning in the ashtray, German-English dictionary open, searching for a man nobody else was looking for. "You came home," she said once, standing in the doorway. "But part of you didn't." She wasn't wrong. Historical context showed that millions of Germans were displaced after the war. Soldiers returning to destroyed cities, refugees fleeing Soviet occupation, former POWs trying to rebuild shattered lives. Records were incomplete, often destroyed. Finding one specific person was like searching for a name carved into ocean water. McCarty taught himself basic German, enough to read documents, write letters to occupation authorities. He contacted the Red Cross, Allied military government offices, displaced persons agencies. Every inquiry came back empty. No record of Franz Huber after June 6, 1944. The silver cigarette case sat on his desk like an accusation. Every time he looked at it, he saw Huber's face through the smoke. The 3-second pause. The choice that saved his life. Margaret stopped asking questions after a while. She'd bring him coffee in the study, kiss the top of his head, leave him to his maps and rosters. The smell of cigarette smoke hung in the room. Whiskey glass on the desk. The sound of her footsteps stopping at the doorway, then retreating when she realized he was too deep in it to surface. Gratitude without closure becomes its own kind of prison. Then in March 1947, an envelope arrived with a Hamburg postmark and no return address. The letter was in broken English, handwritten on thin paper. "You search for the soldier. He searches for you too." Nothing else? No signature? No explanation? McCarty requested emergency leave and booked passage to Germany in early May 1947. The American occupation zone was still chaotic. Millions of displaced people, bombed cities slowly rebuilding, former Wehrmacht soldiers trying to disappear into civilian life or flee to other countries. He spent 6 weeks interviewing anyone who might have information. Former Wehrmacht soldiers in displaced persons camps, Red Cross workers, military government clerks. The name Franz Huber surfaced occasionally in 352nd Infantry Division records, listed as MIA after the Normandy invasion. No body recovered, no confirmation of death. In Bremen, in a crowded DP camp that smelled of cabbage soup and desperation, McCarty met Hans Dietrich, former Hauptmann, Huber's company commander. Gaunt, hollow-eyed, waiting for emigration papers to Argentina. Dietrich confirmed the story. Franz had survived D-Day, stayed in position until the American breakthrough on June 8th, then deserted during the retreat, just walked away from his unit during the chaos. Thousands did. The historical record shows German desertion rates spiked dramatically after D-Day as soldiers realized the war was lost. He said something before he left, Dietrich remembered, speaking in German, while McCarty translated haltingly. He said he had a debt to repay, to an American officer, that the debt would kill him if he didn't settle it. Dietrich showed McCarty a photograph. Huber in Wehrmacht uniform, young face tight with stress. In his breast pocket, the edge of a silver cigarette case just visible. The smell of cabbage soup and unwashed bodies. The sound of German and English mixing in desperate conversations. The sight of men who'd lost everything waiting for permission to disappear into new lives. Desertion isn't cowardice when the war you're fighting has already ended in your heart. Dietrich's final words, delivered with tired certainty. If Franz is alive, he's looking for you. He won't stop until he finds you, or until he's certain you're dead. What he did next would close the circle or break it forever. August 1947. McCarty traced the lead to Munich, following a name that surfaced in Red Cross records. Karl Weber, construction worker, age matching Huber's, registered at a boarding house in the Schwabing district. He arrived on a humid Tuesday, suit jacket soaked with sweat, carrying the cigarette case in his pocket like a talisman. The landlady remembered Karl Weber clearly. Quiet man, always polite, paid rent on time. She led McCarty to the room. Small, sparse, recently vacated. Weber had left for Berlin 2 days earlier. No forwarding address. But the room told stories. Cigarette burn on the wooden dresser. Circular. Exactly the size the base of the silver case would make if left there for months. Dust patterns showing where objects had sat. A German-English dictionary left behind. Pages dog-eared at specific phrases. Forgive. Debt. Honor. McCarty felt certainty flood through him. He was close. Days away. Maybe hours. Franz was real, alive, and also searching. But the certainty was false. What McCarty didn't realize, Franz was staying one city ahead deliberately. Every time McCarty got close, Franz moved. Not running away, but hunting in parallel. Both men searching Red Cross lists, both checking military records, both leaving traces for the other to find. The landlady mentioned one detail as McCarty was leaving. Herr Weber received American newspapers. The Boston Globe, sent from a contact. He would circle articles, take notes. I asked him once why Boston. He said, because that's where my answer is. The smell of lye soap and dust. The sound of construction outside. Berlin rebuilding itself one brick at a time. The sight of an empty room that had held the man he was hunting. Two men hunting each other across a broken country, both carrying the same question. Neither knowing they were circling the same center point, driven by opposite sides of the same debt. By the time McCarty reached Berlin, the trail had gone cold again. But now he knew something crucial. Franz wasn't hiding. He was also searching, and he knew McCarty lived in Boston. September 1947. Back in Boston, a letter arrived from U.S. Army Intelligence, Counterintelligence Corps. They wanted to speak with Lieutenant McCarty regarding a matter of operational security. The meeting took place in a downtown office, fluorescent lights harsh against gray walls. An intelligence officer, Captain Morris, thin face, suspicious eyes, slid a manila folder across the desk. Inside, a photograph of Franz Huber, post-war, gaunt and haunted, taken in Hamburg, March 1947. "We've been tracking this individual," Morris said. "Franz Huber, deserted from German forces June 1944. Possible war crimes investigation pending. Your name has appeared in multiple inquiries across the occupation zones." McCarty's stomach dropped. His search had made Franz visible. Every letter to Red Cross offices, every inquiry with military government clerks, every interview in displaced persons camps, all of it created a paper trail that intelligence services could follow. "Why are you looking for him?" Morris asked. McCarty lied smoothly. "Wrong person. Never heard of him. Must be a clerical error." Morris didn't believe him. But without evidence of collaboration or misconduct, he couldn't push further. The verified context showed that Allied military courts focus primarily on war crimes prosecution, not routine desertion cases. Unless Huber had committed atrocities, intelligence services had limited resources to pursue him. But now Franz was being hunted by three separate forces. McCarty searching for closure, U.S. Army intelligence investigating desertion, and German authorities asking questions about collaboration. Every day he stayed visible, increased the risk. The fluorescent lights hummed. The manila folder lay open between them. Morris's stare carried weight, suspicion, calculation, the cold assessment of someone trained to find hidden connections. McCarty made a decision that day. Protecting Franz meant becoming complicit in his disappearance. He stopped writing letters, stopped checking records, went silent on the search. If intelligence services were watching, they'd see nothing. But he had one advantage. He knew where Franz would eventually go. Not Berlin, not Hamburg, not Argentina or Brazil like so many former Wehrmacht soldiers. Franz would return to where it started, to close the circle, to settle the debt face to face. Tunisia, the POW camp, the place where dignity was stolen and mercy was born. December 1947. McCarty flew to Tunis with 2 weeks' leave and a lie to Margaret about helping the army with historical documentation. Tunisia had gained independence, and the former POW campsite outside the city was mostly abandoned. Concrete foundations, rusted wire, sand reclaiming everything. He camped near the site in a small hotel, waiting. It was a gamble based on nothing but instinct and understanding. If Franz sought true closure, he'd return to where it began. Exactly 4 years after the incident, December 18, 1947. The same date McCarty had slapped him. 3 weeks passed. McCarty walked the old camp daily, photographing the ruins, talking to locals who remembered the American and German prisoners. Desert wind carved new patterns in the sand. The sun set early in winter, casting long shadows across the broken concrete. December 18th arrived. McCarty stood near the spot where he'd taken the cigarette case 4 years earlier. Could almost see it still. The way silver caught sunlight, the way Huber's expression had shifted from hope to cold memorization. Then at sunset, a figure appeared on the far side of the camp ruins, walking slowly, deliberately, silhouetted against orange sky. Franz Huber. Both men stopped when they saw each other. 20 yards apart. Same distance as Omaha Beach. No weapons, no anger. Just two men who'd been circling each other across continents and years, finally in the same place. Neither spoke immediately. The desert wind carried sand across broken concrete. Traffic sounds from distant Tunis. The silence of mutual recognition. Franz looked older, thinner, lines carved deep around his eyes, the face of someone who'd carried too much weight for too long. McCarty probably looked the same. War-aged people in ways civilians never understood. Both men carried cigarette cases. McCarty had the original dented one from Omaha Beach. Franz had acquired a replacement. New, polished, similar engraving. The scene looked impossible. Two former enemies meeting in ruins of where their connection began, drawn by debt and mercy and the impossible physics of conscience. Closure doesn't require words when both men already know the story. Franz spoke first, in careful English. "I came to return something." They sat on a concrete foundation as the sun dropped below the horizon. Franz explained in halting English, occasionally switching to German when words failed. His brother Hans had died at Stalingrad in January 1943. Pushed Franz into a shell crater seconds before a mortar round exploded. The cigarette case was Hans's dying gift, pressed into Franz's hand with final words. "Your brother lives through you." Not just Franz's biological brother, but brotherhood in the larger sense. The duty to show mercy when possible. Franz had survived Stalingrad through luck and Hans's sacrifice. The case became his reminder. Every time he opened it, he remembered the debt. When McCarty took it in Tunisia, it felt like losing Hans again. The slap was humiliation, yes, but bearable. The theft was different. It was severing connection to the only family he had left. "On the beach," Franz said, staring at the horizon, "I saw your face. I remembered Tunisia. I had clear shot, my finger on trigger." He paused. "Then I thought, what would Hans do? He would not become what hurt him. He would choose mercy." "Your brother would have saved you," Franz said quietly. "So I did." McCarty pulled out the original dented cigarette case, blood-stained, scarred from Omaha Beach, held it out. "This belongs to you." Franz refused to take it. "You earned it by searching for me." Most men would not. Most men would take the gift of survival and forget. You could not forget. That makes you worthy to carry it. They reached a different solution. Franz kept his replacement case. McCarty kept the original. Both would carry reminders. Franz of his brother's sacrifice, McCarty of the enemy who taught him mercy. Two pieces of silver in two different pockets, connecting two men across the space where hate usually lived. The desert evening cooled. Sound of distant traffic mixing with wind. The weight of 4 years of searching and running finally settling into something like peace. Brief exchange before parting. "Why did you search?" Franz asked. McCarty answered simply, "Because I needed to know if mercy was real." Forgiveness is what happens when both sides choose to remember differently. January 1948. Franz disappeared again, this time deliberately to protect both of them from Army intelligence. No goodbye, no forwarding address. Just gone, the way soldiers learn to vanish. McCarty returned to Boston. The Bronze Star ceremony happened in November 1947, exactly as planned. 400 attendees, press cameras, mayor's handshake, citation reading, extraordinary valor under fire. He accepted it, knowing the real story. The medal felt both earned and fraudulent. He'd led men under fire, yes. But he survived because an enemy chose mercy over revenge. Margaret noticed the change immediately. "Whatever you needed to find," she said one evening, watching him in his study, "you found it." She was right. The maps came down. The rosters were filed away. The obsessive searching stopped. He kept the cigarette case on his desk. Visible, no longer accusatory. Just a reminder. In 1949, an envelope arrived from Argentina. Postmark, Buenos Aires. Inside, a brief note in improving English. Franz had relocated safely, working as a carpenter in a German immigrant community. No return address. Just confirmation that he'd survived the searching, found a new life in a country that asked few questions about the past. Historical records show tens of thousands of Germans emigrated to South America after the war, some fleeing prosecution, others just seeking fresh starts. McCarty kept the cigarette case in his study until his death in 1982. In his will, he donated it to the National D-Day Museum with a typed note, "From the enemy who taught me mercy." The case now sits in a glass display case, dented silver, German engraving still visible under museum lighting. Visitors read the inscription without knowing the full story. The plaque mentions it was carried during the Normandy invasion, donated by a decorated veteran. Nothing about Tunisia, or the slap, or the impossible choice on Omaha Beach. The museum glass reflects visitors' faces as they pass. Fluorescent lighting catches the silver at angles. The silence of memorial spaces, people speaking in whispers around artifacts of war. The officer who valued discipline learned the value of compassion. The weight of that case never changed, but what it carried did.